This video has been brought to you guys by Gourmet Kitchen. If you are in the catering business, party business, or you just want a bunch of food that's already prepped, throw it in the oven and have it ready for serving, you guys got to get in touch with Gourmet Kitchen. We've serviced their fleet for the last year. They've been awesome to work with. And if you're in the DC area, give Antoine a call. So today I'm going to show you how to replace the oxygen sensor on your van, and you're probably wondering why we're on the interior of this car, and that's because the exhaust pipes are right below this little panel here. So what I'll do is remove all of this interior panel stuff, and I'll show you how to do that really quickly. So to remove this interior panel, you're going to have a couple of clips. You have this clip here, and then this clip here on the floor. You're going to have the exact same thing on the other side. You may be able to squeeze this entire piece out without having to remove this panel. But if you do have to remove this panel, typically you just lift up on it. I've got my first clip off, and sometimes it helps to push in. Got my second clip off. And the way it comes off on these Fords is you'll see here, you have 1, 2, 3 mounting tabs, and you just lift it straight up and it comes right off. Makes it really easy to service and remove. So now that that's out of the way, I'll go ahead and grab this guy and walk it backwards. So now you're looking from inside the cab at the back of the engine. This is your transmission bell housing, this is your transmission vent tube, and this is your transmission dipstick tube right here. Now your O2 sensors are on either side. These are going to be your bank 1, your bank 2, and these are your upstream O2 sensors. So if you had a code for bank 1 sensor 1, that would be referring to the O2 sensor in front of the catalytic converter. So we're going to go ahead and replace this O2 sensor right here. We're getting a code that the heating element is damaged on the inside, and we've already done a quick test earlier to diagnose that this was wrong by doing a resistance test on this O2 sensor itself. So all you have to do to replace this, it's very simple. You're just going to grab this pigtail, you're going to depress the clip down, and you're going to pull backwards on it. So what I'm pushing on is this little tab right here just gets pressed down, and you press very nice and firm on it, and you pull straight back. If you are having difficulty doing this, one tip that I learned is to insert the harness even further on. So what I'm saying is pretend that you're re-putting it on, put it on a little bit harder, then click this tab down, push it down hard, and pull it out. That typically works for me. So now that we have this off, what we're going to do is just pull this little plastic clip off here and move this to the out of the way position. We're then going to go get our oxygen sensor socket, or since you have a lot of space, you could get at this with a crescent wrench, but since we have the right tool for the job, that's what I'm going to use. Okay guys, so we're using a 7/8 oxygen sensor socket. As you can see, it has a notch in it which allows us to go over this cord. Now, it only goes on one way, and you can use an extension to gain access. So we're going to slip this over the harness and get this into position. Now, you may have a little bit of issue getting some access because you have your transmission dipstick tube in the way, so use either a longer or shorter extension so that you get the proper access. Then you'll just get on there with your ratchet and you'll break it loose. Now, one thing to note here is that because we're using this long extension, it makes it harder to remove the socket. The longer your extension, the more torque is going to be required to remove it. So another thing we can do is come with just the socket and see if we can't get that on there easily. Okay guys, so the shorter the distance is to the force you're applying, the less torque you require to remove it. So now I'm going to go ahead and I can break this loose. And that first little bit of breaking it loose is really what holds this thing on. And this car only has about 75,000 miles on it. So this hasn't really caked in there like some of those other ones have, which can really cause an issue. So now that I have this O2 sensor removed, I'm going to compare it to the new one. We're going with a Bosch O2 sensor, which at the time was the original equipment manufacturer, and we're just comparing them to make sure that they are identical, that they have the same number of pins, which is a 6-pin, and just making sure that everything looks good. So one thing to take note of, whenever you're installing any sort of exhaust component, you want to make sure that you have some form of anti-seize on the threads. Now this O2 sensor came with anti-seize already applicated, so I don't need to do it again. I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that these threads are clean, which they are, and I'll go ahead and reinstall this O2 sensor. So I'm just going to gently put this in and spin it down into position. And once I have that spun into position, I'll go ahead and really crank it down just a little bit with my special socket and wrench set. So I'm just going to get a good nice crank on it to crush that little sleeve, that little washer that's on there. And I'm just getting it nice and snug, not super over torquing it down, but just nice and snug. So now that's in there, I'm happy with how that feels. I'll go ahead and reattach my harness. Now my pigtail portion here has two little trees that go into the side of the transmission dipstick tube. Then I'll be able to grab my O2 sensor harness from the ECU side and go ahead and plug that in. So you see I have my new O2 sensor installed. It's away from anything super hot. The harness pigtail is back in where it used to be, and everything here looks good. Now, this is something that you would just want to take note of when you're doing this job, that access is going to be difficult if you're working on another vehicle, and that you want to make sure that you have the appropriate socket. If you do this without the appropriate socket, you run the risk of marring up these ends here and stripping this sucker out really bad. That will give you a massive headache and is not a fun job to complete. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to check out our videos that we post weekly on Fix It Friday. We really appreciate you guys helping our channel grow, and as always, happy motoring.